for joining me on probably your lunch break. I'm April Rozzo. If you don't know me already, I'm a registered dietitian with Florida Cancer Specialists. And this is our very first virtual teaching kitchen from my kitchen. We are gonna make today a butternut cranberry whole grain salad. It's gonna be delicious. So hopefully you've got water boiling on the stove if you're using the farro, like I said. If you're using quinoa, then go ahead and put that quinoa in the pot with water and bring that heat up so that we can bring it to a boil. If you're using the farro, go ahead and dump it in your pot of boiling water. So we're just gonna do that, and that way, so the farro takes a little bit longer to cook. So that takes about 25 to 30 minutes. The quinoa probably is only gonna take about 20 minutes, which is why if you're using the farro, I wanted to get it in the pot as quickly as possible. So we're just gonna bring the temperature down. I'm gonna cover it. And I learned last time I did this that it boils over really quickly. So I just want it to simmer, okay? Now, if you're doing the quinoa, you're gonna bring it to a boil in the water. And then once it's at a boil, cover it, lower the heat to medium low, and then just let it simmer for about 20 minutes, okay? All right, so we've got the grains on the stove cooking, okay? So now we're gonna deal with our butternut squash. Hopefully your oven is primed and ready to go at 400. I bought, and I hope you guys did too, the already peeled and cubed. I got it from Sprouts. I've seen it at Publix also, okay? The last time I did this recipe, I bought a whole butternut squash and broke it down myself. It took me about an hour. I almost lost a finger. I don't recommend it if you don't have to. This is much easier and safer, I feel like. I am gonna add a teaspoon of salt. Last time I just did like a pinch of salt. I was trying not to use a lot of salt. And it turned out to not be enough. And then I had to add some at the end, which is fine, you can do that. But I'm gonna go ahead and add a teaspoon. And then we're gonna add some pepper, probably about half a teaspoon. I have one of these grinders, so I kind of eyeball it as I'm doing it. Again, the salt and pepper, you can add to taste afterwards once you've mixed everything together. So you can always start with less and then add more as you need to. If you add more at the beginning, you can't take it away if it's too much. Okay. All right, so we've got some salt, some pepper, a tablespoon of olive oil. So a little quick swirl there. You feel free to measure. And we're just gonna mix this up, toss it all together. Okay. We want that salt and pepper and olive oil evenly over the butternut squash. I love butternut squash in the fall and winter. It's in season in the fall and winter. It's a great source of potassium and also vitamin A and vitamin C for those antioxidants, okay? And it's a great, if I didn't say this, it's a great source of fiber. All right, so we're gonna take this butternut squash, walk with me to the oven, okay? Spread it out on your pan, your baking pan. I use a silicone baking mat just because it helps with the cleanup, and that way I don't have to use aluminum foil every time I cook, but you are welcome to do that. So just kind of spread it out here. Okay, hands off. And let's get that in the oven. Okay, so that's gonna cook for about 20 minutes, 20 to 25 minutes, depending on how big or small the cubes of butternut squash are. My butternut squash already cubed, the cubes are pretty small. So it's probably going to be maybe 15 to 20 minutes actually for that to cook. So we're just going to keep an eye on that. All right. So now we got to cut an onion. Oh, we have to chop some walnuts too. Let's do that first because we have to toast our nuts. If you are using pumpkin seeds, you don't have to chop them, obviously. But if you are using walnuts or some other kind of nut, I'm just checking on this. I thought I heard it boiling over, but it is fine. If you are using walnuts or some other kind of nut, I like to chop them before I toast them. And for this small amount, this 3 tablespoons, frankly, I'm too lazy to get out the food processor. So I just put them in a Ziploc baggie. And I've got a rolling pin. And I'm just going to chop them this way. Okay. Just as easy. Does the same thing for you. I've even got spillage over here. There we go. Okay. You just want to break them up. They don't have to be tiny pieces. Really, the reason we're chopping them is to get more surface area of the nut toasted so that we can get more flavor out of it. And then once they're toasted, we're just going to add them. You can put them on another baking pan, or you can do a skillet. I'm going to put the skillet in the oven. You can toast them on the stove top also, but I figured I've already got my oven preheated, so I might as well take advantage of that. And the walnuts, the reason I like to use the walnuts is that they are an awesome source of those heart-healthy omega-3 fatty acids. So if you don't eat enough fish or seafood, these walnuts are a great option. I also just really like the flavor. Nuts are a great source of protein also, so that adds. So we just pop those in the oven also. 8 to 10 minutes. You have to watch the nuts really carefully, okay? Because they can burn quickly. You'll start to smell them as they toast. And so really we need to keep an eye on them. I'm just checking the time so that we can keep an eye on them. I'm actually going to set my timer just in case so that I don't forget. Because last time I did forget and I almost burnt them. So there you go. All right, let's cut our onion. Everybody's still with me, I hope. I'm not going too fast, am I?
You're doing great.
I've got a red onion. If you don't like red onions, you can certainly use a white onion, a Vidalia, a shallot. I like the flavor of the red onion in this particular recipe, so that's what we're going with. Make sure your knife is sharp. A dull knife actually contributes more to injuries, cutting your finger, because the knife will slip. And then when you do cut, try to tuck your fingers in. If you're not used to cooking and cutting, some of you may be, but if you're not, try to tuck your fingers in so that you don't take a fingertip off, okay? I made sure I sharpened my knife before we got started. So I just took the tip off, so I have a flat surface, cut it in half, and we're gonna peel this outer layer off. I have no hints for how to make onions not make you cry. It just kind of comes with the territory. I told my coworkers I'm actually lucky that I wear contacts because they act as a buffer between my eyes and the onions. And I noticed when I'm wearing my glasses and cooking and cutting onions, I tear up way worse. So, not that I'm telling everybody to go get contacts, but a little perk. Okay, so now that we've got the onions ready to go, I'm going to keep my fingers in and just do slices this way, all the way down the onion. Okay. And then we're going to go the opposite way so that we can get that nice chop or that dice. If you're not a pro, guys, I'm not a pro. I mean, I do this at home all the time, but I am certainly not a professional. Take your time. You don't need to go super fast like the pros on TV. Okay, that's how we cut fingers off. And then when it gets too small for you to really hold on to, if that starts to get dangerous, I have plenty of onion. I'm just going to stop and then I'm going to pick up my next one. So we're going to do the same thing with the other half. Make those long cuts. All right, and then the other way. Okay. Now, Nicole, you said you already made yours, right?
I did. I was trying to make sure I could watch for the questions.
Is it going to be lunch today? Are you having it for lunch or are you saving it for dinner?
So I'm going to do both. I'm going to put this over top of lettuce. And I actually really like it when it's cold and warm.
Nice. Okay.
And
I liked it both ways also. I liked it better warm. So I refrigerated it overnight, but then when I dished out a serving, I threw it in the microwave for a little bit just to kind of take the edge off. Big container, okay? This is where we're gonna put everything to kind of toss our salad, and my Tupperware has a lid for it, so this is all one-stop shop here. So we're gonna mix everything in here, and then I'll be able to put a lid on it and throw it in the fridge. So I'm just gonna put my onion in there and get it out of my way. Now, guys, this has some protein in it by itself. The whole grain, whether you're using quinoa or farro, it's got some protein. And then we said the nuts have a little bit of protein also. But I want this to be a meal for me this week. So once we make the salad, I have a rotisserie chicken in the fridge that I'm gonna take the skin off and cut up the chicken, and I'm gonna add the chicken in with it, and that's gonna be a whole salad meal for me, okay? All right, so that's done. We're just waiting for, oh, you can go ahead and toss the cranberries in too, because that's gonna go into the salad. So throw those cranberries in the bowl with the chopped onion, because then the grain and the butternut squash will also go in there. So now we have to make our dressing. It is so easy to make a dressing at home rather than buying the store-bought dressings. I love doing it because it's so easy. First, we have to cut up our garlic. So if you've got a clove of garlic, if you are unfamiliar with how to break down a clove of garlic, this is the easiest way to do it. Take your knife flat and we're gonna smash it, and that way the peel slides right off. There we go. So now I've peeled my clove of garlic. And I'm gonna chop it up the same way I did the onion. Just be careful with your finger. Nobody needs to lose a finger today.
hey, April,
Yeah.
if we have some of the onions that are or onions or garlic that's already pre-cut in the jars, is that okay?
Absolutely. And normally I do that with garlic. Normally I buy several heads of garlic. I peel them just like you saw me do with the knife, throw them in a food processor and mince them in the processor. And then I just put them in a jar with a little splash of olive oil to preserve them and throw them in the fridge. So anytime I'm cooking something that has garlic in it, it's already done and ready to go. I just get a spoonful out, okay? That's my timer for the walnuts. And I would have forgotten them, so I'm very happy I set the timer. So if you're toasting nuts, give them a check. I'm gonna leave them in for just a couple more minutes. I'm not smelling them yet, but they're almost done. Okay, now, so this garlic, when I chopped it, it's a little bit bigger than I want it to be. So I'm just gonna make it a little bit finer here. And again, this is why I do it in bulk in the food processor, because that way I don't have to chop each individual clove. And then I have a whole jar of garlic just ready to cook with.
Beth had a great share as well. She found a tool that will chop her onions in a matter of seconds.
Fantastic. What is this tool? Tell us.
Can you share the link with us, Beth?
Because that would be
You
amazing.
might be cooking.
She might be cooking, that's right. All right, so now that I've got my garlic kind of minced down and smaller, a little bit finer, I am gonna add that to my balsamic vinegar, okay? And I believe, I'm not looking at the recipe right now, it's 1/3 of a cup or 1/4 of a cup. You guys should all have the recipe.
I believe it's 1/4.
1/4 of a cup, yep. I measured it out ahead of time. So here's my balsamic vinegar, and I'm just gonna add my garlic to it. Get the rest off the table here, off my cutting board. And then we are also going to add to this balsamic vinegar a teaspoon of honey and a teaspoon of Dijon mustard. I actually had some whole grain Dijon mustard in my fridge already. So that's what I'm using. All right, so I've got my teaspoon of honey.
Hey, April, if we only had maple syrup, how do you think that would do?
I think it would taste delicious. It's going to change the flavor a little bit. Maple syrup and honey have different flavors, but maple syrup is amazing with butternut squash. So that flavor profile, that maple with the squash and the nuts and the cranberries, that is perfect. So if you don't have honey, if you prefer maple syrup, same amount, 1 teaspoon, and I think it would be absolutely delicious. It's a great question. Okay, so we've got balsamic vinegar, garlic, honey, and mustard. I'm gonna give that a quick whisk just to mix it up. Check my time, okay. That butternut squash is probably almost done. Grab the nuts out of the oven if you have not done so already. Perfect.
Hey, we've got a great idea here from Leslie about using a coffee bean grinder to chop nuts.
Oh, fantastic.
That's a great idea.
It is. I love that. And I do the same thing with nuts sometimes, especially at Christmas when we're baking a lot. I do them in bulk in the food processor and then just throw them in the freezer already ground up or chopped up. This was such a small amount that's why I just used the rolling pin. I didn't feel like breaking out the food processor. But that's a fantastic idea, coffee bean grinder. All right, so we're gonna add in a 1/2 cup of olive oil. I'm gonna add it in slowly while I'm whisking so that it mixes together, so that it emulsifies with the vinegar, okay? So we're gonna start whisking and just kind of pour that in, drizzle it in while you're whisking. It's not as big of a deal whether it's fully emulsified, because once we've got it all mixed together, we're just going to pour it all into the salad all together. If you were making a dressing ahead of time that you were going to keep in the fridge for salad, you see it separate in the fridge, and that's fine. If it does separate, it's not a big deal. You just mix it up before you use it. But if you're quick enough, which I'm not always, you can get it emulsified so that it doesn't separate. I'm not always that good, you guys. Okay.
when I made this earlier, April, I thought it looked like it was a lot of dressing, but the fara really absorbed it.
It really does. And you know, the original recipe, I'm so glad you said that, Nicole. The original recipe actually commented, the author said specifically, use the whole amount. It's going to look like too much at first. It's not, because the grain is going to absorb some of it. And especially if you're going to add, like I'm going to add that rotisserie chicken, so it's going to increase the volume of the salad. So yeah, I'm going to use this whole amount in that salad. It serves, it looks like a lot of dressing, but it makes like 6 to 8 servings. Mine is going to make 6 servings because it's going to be a whole meal. But if this was just a side salad for you and you were having something else to go with it, it probably makes a good 8 servings. That's a lot, you know, because that the farro or the quinoa, it expands as it cooks. So you end up with a lot more than you thought you were going to. All right, so dressing made. We did pretty good, okay? Let's check on the butternut squash. Now, if you're using quinoa, it's probably done at this point. If you got it on the stove cooking, like right at 12, it's probably pretty close to done. But if you're using the farro, we've got, it's almost done, but we've probably got a few more minutes on the farro. I am going to check my butternut squash. I'm going to use a fork to see if it's tender.
April, while you're doing that, tell me about the water. How much water to add with the farro?
Thank you. So if you're using the quinoa, it's on the recipe for 1.5 cups. With the farro, there are a couple of different ways to cook it. So you can use less water. You can do 1 or 1.5 cups of water so that the farro absorbs it. And then when there's no more water, it's done, just like when you cook quinoa or rice. The other way to cook farro, which is how I did it today, is to do more water and cook it like pasta, where you drain the excess afterwards. So for 1 cup of farro, I had 3 cups of water. And I'm going to taste the farro. When it's soft, it's chewy. Then I'm just going to drain the rest of the water out. To me, that's the easier way to cook it. So let's check our squash. It looks pretty good. It's steaming. Oh yeah. So when it's fork tender, when you can slide that fork in really easily and it's nice and soft, it's done, okay? And mine is definitely done. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn my oven off. Now I'm gonna use, we're gonna use a little scooper here so that I can get this into my pan. You certainly can wait until it's cooled. You don't have to do it hot, but I'm just gonna gather it all up here. And we're just gonna scoop it in. We'll do it over here so you guys can see me a little bit better. How about that? And that way I don't have my back to you. Okay, I hope you guys are cooking at home because this smells so good. And it's gonna,
I
go
love
ahead, what?
how you can assemble it when it's warm.
And that way, so you can eat it as soon as you assemble it. But guys, let me tell you, when you add that dressing, it's actually better if you can refrigerate it for at least a couple of hours and let all of those flavors meld and marinate together. It's gonna taste so much better after that. It's worth it. Okay, that's in there. I'm gonna go ahead and add my nuts. You might be using a different type of nut or pumpkin seeds. That's the other reason I like this recipe so much. It's so versatile. You can use different vegetables. Maybe you don't like squash. Or maybe it's summer and squash is not in season. You could use broccoli or cauliflower. You can use walnuts, almonds, pecans, the pumpkin seeds. You can use raisins or currants instead of dried cranberries. Whatever you like and whatever you have on hand is completely perfect. So we're going to do a taste test. We're going to try the farro or check your quinoa. Like I said, if you're using quinoa, it's probably done. It's probably already done. And that you would know, oh, I don't even have to taste this. If you can see this on the camera, how much bigger it's gotten from the original. That is definitely done. So I just have to drain it. And I apologize, my sink is a little bit off camera here. But I'm just going to drain this, get the excess water out. So Nicole, did you use the farro also when you made yours?
I did. I used the farro. I just like how it's got that little bit of chew. I think it pairs so well with
yes, I like
seeds.
the chew, and I also really like, it has kind of a nutty flavor that the quinoa doesn't have.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that flavor in this recipe. I like it with the squash and the walnuts. I think it goes really well together.
I just did a quinoa earlier over the weekend, and I did it similar to this, but I did a lime vinaigrette with some black beans.
Oh, that sounds amazing. Maybe you'll do our next cooking demo. Okay, so we've got everything in there. We've got the butternut squash, your grain. Did I lose audio? Can you guys still hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, it just sounded, I had an echo for a second. That might be from my phone back behind me. The grain, the butternut squash, the onion, the cranberries, the walnuts. So all we have to do now is add our dressing. You give it a little bit of a stir. Pour it right in. Okay, get out of the way. And then toss it all together. So I want you guys to look at the clock. It's almost 12:30. We started at 12. And we have this beautiful salad that will feed a family in a half an hour. It's healthy, it's high fiber, potassium, vitamin A, vitamin C, some protein, and it was done in 30 minutes. Okay, so if you can see, if you're not cooking, finished product. Let me see if I can get it under here as a close-up. There you go. Okay. I'm going to add my chicken to it. You don't have to. But like I said, I'm going to make it a full meal for myself instead of a side salad. And then put it in the fridge, refrigerate it, like I said, for at least 2 hours. Overnight is fine. It's going to sit in my fridge for a few days because I'm going to eat it leftover through the week. But at least 2 hours to let that dressing really absorb. Before you add any more salt or pepper, taste it, okay? I'm going to give mine a taste, but before you add any seasoning to it, let it sit in the fridge for a couple of hours. And then taste it. You can add more salt and pepper if you think it needs it, okay? That's it, guys. We have lunch or dinner. What questions do you have for me? What can I answer?
I think everyone's just been saying how delicious it looks.
Fantastic. Look, it's a really simple salad. It's a grain, it's butternut squash, it's nuts, it's fruit. What makes this recipe is the dressing. This balsamic Dijon dressing is so good. It adds an amazing flavor to this salad.
I think
That was the consensus when we did it in December, you know, was, oh my gosh, this dressing.
the dressing for me makes it. It's so good.
Yeah. And I am not a mustard person. I don't like mustard. The only reason I had that Dijon mustard in the fridge was for this recipe. I bought it in December to make this recipe. And it doesn't taste like mustard. It really just enhances the flavor of the dressing. So if you're not a mustard fan, use it anyway. Trust me, don't leave it out.
Will the dressing keep for other uses? That's a great question.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you could make this dressing, even if you weren't making this salad, you could make the dressing and throw it in the fridge. It's good for at least a week. Throw it in the fridge and use it on other salads if you want to.
Will you share the recipe?
So the recipe should have been in the link when you registered, but I'm sure that we could put it up again or attach the link to the video. Dana, do you know how to do that, or do we need to check with marketing?
So I know it's also currently posted on the FCS website under nutrition.
Perfect. So there you go.
And what about the cranberries? Are they sweetened or unsweetened dried cranberries?
So dried cranberries, if you can get them unsweetened, that would certainly be better. What was available to me in Publix, what I found in Publix, was a third less sugar. So it wasn't completely unsweetened, but they were less sugar than the original Ocean Spray variety. So, but if you can find them unsweetened, all the better. Anything else? Any other questions?
It looks delicious. This has been great.
Good. And we will do it again. I don't know what the recipe is yet. Next month, we're back to webinar style with decoding the nutrition label. And then after that, in April, we will cook again. We're going to do another teaching kitchen. So stay tuned for the advertisements and the flyers, and please join us again. All right, guys, I think